Secretary of War Pete Hegseth speaking at the Indiana Defense Summit, calling the military under former President Joe Biden, quote, woke and weak. Hegseth arguing women in the military, especially those who may face combat, must be held to the same standards as men.
Standards must be uniform, gender neutral, and high. Because if they're not standards, then they're just suggestions. Suggestions that get our sons and daughters killed in combat.
This is part of Hegseth's initiative to root out social justice and political correctness from the military. The mainstream media claiming Hegseth's comments are sexist. The accusations come as women set to lead SEAL teams, 6 were dismissed from the post.
Joining us now, Evie Harris is a U.S. Army veteran and Project 21 ambassador. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Evie, curious to get your perspective here, given your background. Is this the right approach? Do you agree with Secretary Hegseth, and should women be allowed to serve while being held to those same physical standards as men?
Yes, I absolutely do agree with Secretary Hegseth, and I'll tell you why. Particularly in combat roles, we have plenty of our men on the front lines. I think if we have women in those combat roles, they do have to meet the standards. We have lives, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers on the line, and people who love them back home. We absolutely do need the high standards.
So what's the best way to maintain effectiveness in the military that includes both men and women?
Look, there are plenty of roles for men and women in non-combat positions. Secretary Hegseth directed this particular standard or these standards towards combat roles. I think there's a huge difference, an important difference. Those are the people who are on the front lines. The standards can be met. The standards, if you can meet them, all for it. I'm not saying women should not ever be there if you can meet the standards, but they have to be standardized. They cannot be there just because of a feel-good emotional reaction when we have people's lives on the line.
Yeah, that was exactly what the Secretary of War Hegseth mentioned yesterday. He also targeted what he calls racist, sexist, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the military. Do you think eliminating these programs will help level the playing field and make the military stronger?
I think so, yes. Look, the military, by and large, yes, America, the military itself, does have a racial past. But by and large, when people go into the military, they are advanced on merit-based aptitudes and skills. That's just it. Are there some challenges? Are there some sticky areas? Maybe. But nevertheless, we need to have a military that can meet its standards, whether that's skill-wise, academically, in other trainings, in order to advance our troops and to put them in the best position to succeed. The military, the Department of War, the Pentagon budget is immense. We need to make sure our resources and our people have the best chance and opportunities to do the best, because as Americans, we certainly can do the best, and we can exceed those standards often.
Interesting. So one of the ways Secretary Hegseth is protecting women in the military is by keeping biological men out of female spaces, including living quarters, showers, and bathrooms. The move, though, drawing sharp criticism from the left, as the policy no longer allows transgender individuals to serve. A group of former Air Force transgender members is now suing. What's your take on that?
Let me say this. I'm going to try to be very clear. I've always been for transgenders or anyone in the military, gays or whomever. If you're there and you can do the job, not based on your sexuality or your perceived sexuality, if you can do the job, I'm for keeping you in the military. I think we've invested that time and energy, particularly if you went in as a gay person or whatever. If you're there and you can do the job, that's fine. However, let's be clear. There is a difference between men and women. There's an XX chromosome for women, and there's XY for men. That's not going to change. So we do need clear, separate bathrooms. I'll give you a quick example. I was in the VA hospital here a couple days ago, and the bathrooms are now starting to take over this, gender neutral signage or whatever the case may be. I think it is demeaning. It's embarrassing. We have a whole veterans division dedicated to women, and now we cannot suddenly determine who's a woman and who's a man. I think it's a slap in the face to the military men and women. That's why we call them military men and women, because there are stark differences.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Secretary Hegseth is clearly focused on getting back to common sense.
Yeah. Evie Harris, thank you
I am
so
too.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your insights, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for having me.
You bet.